middle-aged rancher thought he'd be alone forever, until 4 Apache women begged for just one night. John had lived on the outskirts of Arizona for nearly 30 years. His ranch was a wide stretch of land, surrounded by dusty plains, rugged hills, and towering mesas. The air was dry, carrying the scent of sagebrush and earth baked under the sun. For many people, such isolation would feel unbearable, but for John, it had become both a comfort and a prison. He had chosen this life after a series of disappointments in his earlier years, and though it offered peace, it also came with a persistent sense of loneliness that he could never quite shake. Every morning, John woke before the sun, climbing out of his small wooden cabin to feed the cattle. The routine was mechanical but necessary. Check the fences for breaks, guide the cows to fresh pastures, and ensure the water troughs were full. Over time, these tasks had become second nature, and the rhythm of ranch life had taken root in his very bones. The cattle moved like clockwork under his guidance, and the land seemed to respond to his steady hands. Yet, no matter how well the ranch thrived, there was always a quiet emptiness gnawing at him during the evenings when the chores were done, and the sky turned brilliant shades of orange and purple. John's life had once been filled with dreams of companionship. In his youth, he had loved deeply, only to have life twist in ways he could not control. Friends drifted away, family moved to distant cities, and relationships he had hoped would last ended quietly, leaving only memories and a gentle ache in his heart. The years had softened him, and he no longer yearned for excitement or the hustle of social life. Instead, he craved understanding and connection, though he feared it might never come again. Despite the solitude, John found small joys in the natural world around him. The sun rising over the hills painted the desert in colors no human hand could replicate. He loved listening to the coyotes in the distance at night, howling in a chorus that somehow made him feel less alone. He admired the stubborn desert plants that thrived despite harsh conditions and the birds that migrated in perfect formations across the open sky. These things, though silent, felt like companions in their own way. They reminded him that life could endure even in isolation. One morning, as John rode his old horse along the edge of the pasture, he noticed a change in the air. The sky, usually clear and pale blue, had a heavy gray tint. The wind carried the faint scent of rain, unusual for this time of year. He stopped atop a ridge, surveying the vast expanse of land that he called home. From this vantage point, the world seemed both immense and lonely, stretching endlessly beyond the horizon. John felt a familiar pang, a mixture of awe and melancholy, as he realized how small he was in this vast landscape. His thoughts often wandered to what life could have been if he had made different choices, or if circumstances had been kinder. He remembered the towns he had once visited, the friends he had laughed with, the moments of warmth that had slipped through his fingers. Now he had only himself and his routines, yet there was a comfort in knowing the land was predictable in ways people were not. The ranch had rules, cycles, and tasks that needed attention. Nature, in its stubborn consistency, provided a form of companionship that was reliable, even if silent. That evening, after the sun dipped below the horizon, John prepared his simple dinner. He lit a small fire in the stove, listening to the creaks of the old cabin as it settled against the cooling night. His meals were plain, bread, beans, and whatever he had on hand, but he savored them, finding pleasure in the simplicity of life. As he ate, he looked out of the window at the wide-open land, marveling at the stars that seemed impossibly close. On nights like this, he felt a mixture of awe and sadness. The beauty of the universe reminded him of both the possibilities he had lost and the quiet contentment he had found. In his solitude, John often reflected on the lessons life had taught him. He had learned patience, resilience, and the ability to find meaning in small things. He had also learned the hard truth that humans could be unpredictable, leaving behind wounds that time alone could not heal. Over the years, he had become cautious, wary of letting anyone too close. The memories of loss lingered, shadowing his desire for companionship with a sense of fear. Despite his caution, John sometimes allowed himself to imagine what it would be like to share his life with someone else. In these fleeting moments, he pictured quiet evenings by the fire, laughter echoing through the cabin, and shared stories over simple meals. These daydreams were bittersweet. They brought a warmth to his heart while reminding him of what he had missed. Yet he never let these thoughts consume him, returning always to the steady rhythm of his days. Life on the ranch had also taught John a deep respect for self-reliance. Every broken fence, every sick animal, every unexpected challenge had been met with his own hands and determination. There was pride in this independence, a knowledge that he could survive and thrive alone. Yet he sometimes wondered if survival alone was enough. He pondered the difference between living and truly being alive, and in these moments, a longing quietly stirred within him. One cold evening, as a winter storm rolled in over the hills, John prepared the ranch for the coming weather. He secured the gates, fed the animals extra hay, and checked the water supplies. The wind howled outside, rattling the cabin, and the first snowflakes began to fall. He watched from the doorway as the land transformed under a blanket of white, marveling at its stark beauty. For a moment, he felt the full weight of his isolation. Yet even in that loneliness, he felt a strange peace. The land, the animals, and the sky were his companions, and for now, that was enough. As night fell and the storm grew stronger, John sat by the fire, reflecting on his life. He understood that he might remain alone forever, and he had come to accept that possibility. But deep inside, beneath layers of caution and resignation, a small spark of hope remained. Perhaps life had surprises yet to offer, moments of connection waiting to be discovered in ways he could not yet imagine. Little did John know that this quiet life, so carefully guarded and routine-bound, was about to be touched by an unexpected encounter, one that would challenge everything he thought he knew about loneliness, companionship, and the power of human connection. The ranch, a place of solitude for so many years, was about to become the setting for a story he could never have anticipated. The next morning, John woke to the sound of the storm easing. The wind had dropped to a gentle whistle, and the first light of dawn was peeking over the distant hills, casting a soft glow over the snow-dusted land. As he sipped his coffee, the warmth from the cup seeped into his hands, a small comfort against the chill in the cabin. Life on the ranch was always unpredictable, but the storm had brought a rare sense of calm. That calm, however, was about to be interrupted in a way John could never have imagined. As he stepped outside to inspect the fences and check on the cattle, he noticed something unusual. 4 figures were moving carefully along the edge of the property. At first, he thought they were travelers lost in the storm, but as they drew closer, he realized they were women. Their clothes were simple, layered against the cold, and their eyes carried the determination of people used to facing challenges. John's first instinct was caution. Strangers rarely appeared at his ranch, and visitors at this hour were even more uncommon. Yet there was something in their demeanor, quiet strength, and a respectful presence that gave him pause. The women approached slowly, each step measured and deliberate. John called out a greeting, his voice steady but tinged with curiosity. "Good morning. Can I help you?" His tone was calm, but his heart raced slightly. He had not expected company in weeks, perhaps months. One of the women, who seemed to be the oldest, spoke first. "We were caught in the storm. We are looking for shelter just until the weather passes." Her voice was soft, yet carried authority and confidence. The others nodded quietly, their eyes scanning the ranch and the surrounding land. John hesitated for only a moment before nodding. He had learned long ago that kindness and caution could coexist. "You can come in. It's not much, but it's warm inside." He gestured toward the cabin, and the women thanked him politely. Their gratitude was genuine, expressed with smiles and a quiet dignity that made John feel a strange warmth in his chest. As they entered the cabin, he noticed the careful way they moved, the way they observed their surroundings with both respect and curiosity. They were not city folk, nor were they tourists. There was a quiet pride in their steps, a familiarity with the land that resonated with his own connection to it. Inside, John led them to the modest kitchen area and offered them hot tea and bread. The cabin was small but cozy, with a fire crackling in the stove. The women accepted the tea with grace, their expressions softening as they warmed their hands. John watched them, intrigued by their presence. There was a certain energy about them, strong, independent, yet approachable. He had spent so many years alone that the sight of people who seemed so alive, so present, stirred something deep inside him. Conversation began slowly, tentative at first. The women introduced themselves. Maria, the eldest, spoke for the group with a quiet authority. Then came Alina, lively and curious, Rosa, thoughtful and observant, and Leela, young and spirited, with a sparkle of mischief in her eyes. They shared that they were from a nearby Apache community, traveling together to attend a gathering in the town several miles away. The storm had caught them by surprise and they had sought refuge wherever they could find it. John listened, genuinely interested as they spoke about their lives, their families, and the traditions they cherished. The more they spoke, the more John felt a connection forming. They were strangers, yet their stories carried familiarity. They laughed softly at small memories, and John found himself smiling along, even sharing a story from his own life about a stubborn calf that had once escaped into the hills. The women listened intently, asking questions, their curiosity genuine and respectful. For the first time in years, John felt a sense of camaraderie, a bond that did not demand anything but presence and attentiveness. As the morning passed, the storm began to wane outside, but the atmosphere inside the cabin grew richer. They shared knowledge about the land, the plants, and the sky. Maria spoke of herbs that grew wild in the desert, their uses in healing and cooking. Alina shared stories of her childhood, growing up under wide skies and learning lessons from elders who valued wisdom over wealth. Rosa, the quiet observer, asked questions about the ranch, showing admiration for John's knowledge and skill. And Leela, playful and full of life, teased gently, bringing laughter that echoed through the cabin. John felt a strange mixture of emotions. There was joy in the companionship, of course, but also a quiet hesitation. He had spent so long alone that letting people into his world, even for a short time, felt risky. Yet the women were not imposing. They respected the boundaries of his home and his life. Their presence was a gentle reminder that life could be richer when shared, that connection was not just a fleeting pleasure but a source of growth and understanding. By mid-morning, John realized that he had not felt this alive in years. He had always cherished the land, the routine, and the solitude, but this unexpected visit brought a new dimension to his life. It reminded him of what he had once known, of friendships, laughter, and the warmth of human presence. He watched as the women moved about the cabin with ease, helping tidy up and offering assistance without hesitation. Their actions were simple yet meaningful, demonstrating care and consideration that touched him deeply. The storm outside had now become a gentle drizzle, the clouds parting to reveal patches of blue sky. John suggested they step outside for a moment to see the land in the fresh light after the rain. The women agreed and they walked together across the ranch, their boots crunching on the wet earth. The world felt different after the storm, the colors more vivid, the air fresher. Birds returned to the trees, singing their songs with renewed energy. The women seemed delighted, pointing out small details, the tracks of an animal, the bloom of a hardy desert flower, the way sunlight reflected off distant hills. John noticed how attentive they were, how much they appreciated the land, and it made him feel seen and understood. As they walked, John realized that this visit was unlike anything he had expected. The women were not here for romance, nor were they seeking anything from him. They were travelers caught in circumstance, yet their presence had opened a door in his heart that he had thought permanently closed. He found himself sharing stories he had never told anyone, memories of his youth, the mistakes he had made, the dreams he had abandoned. And the women listened, not judging, not prying, simply listening with genuine interest and empathy. By noon, the sun had fully returned, casting warm light across the ranch. The women prepared to continue their journey, but before leaving, Maria turned to John. "Thank you for your kindness," she said softly. "It is rare to find such generosity in the world. Your home, your land, and your spirit have given us more than shelter. We are grateful." John nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He had always believed that the world could be harsh, that people were often self-centered and uncaring. Yet in this small cabin with these four strangers, he had experienced something rare and precious: mutual respect, shared humanity, and the quiet magic of connection. As they mounted their horses and prepared to leave, John felt a pang of longing. He realized how much he had missed this interaction, laughter, the simple act of being present with others. Yet he also understood that life was unpredictable and that moments like this could not be forced or expected. He waved as they rode away, their figures gradually disappearing into the vast landscape. The silence returned to the ranch, but it was different now. It was a silence filled with possibility, a reminder that life could surprise him in ways he had never imagined. The rest of the day passed quietly, yet John noticed subtle changes within himself. He walked among the cattle with renewed energy, repaired fences with greater focus, and even sang softly as he worked, a habit he had abandoned years ago. The visit of the four women had awakened something dormant inside him, a sense of hope, a feeling that he was not destined to remain alone forever. The ranch, which had been both his sanctuary and his prison, now felt like a place of potential, a canvas on which new experiences could be painted. As night fell, John sat by the fire once again, reflecting on the day. The storm had brought unexpected visitors, and with them lessons about trust, kindness, and the quiet power of human connection. He realized that life, no matter how isolated it seemed, could still offer surprises, and that even a single encounter could change the course of a heart. He smiled to himself, feeling warmth not just from the fire, but from the memory of the laughter, stories, and presence of those four women. For the first time in many years, John allowed himself to imagine the possibility of more encounters, more connections, and perhaps even friendships that could endure beyond a single day. The thought was exhilarating, yet comforting. He understood that life would continue with its routines, its challenges, and its solitude. But now it carried with it a promise that even in isolation, the world held moments of wonder and hearts could still be touched in ways that were unexpected and profound. And so, as the fire crackled and the stars appeared in the clear night sky, John closed his eyes, feeling a quiet sense of anticipation for the days to come. The ranch remained the same, vast and silent, yet everything within it felt subtly transformed. The memory of the four women, their kindness, and their connection had left an indelible mark on his heart, opening him to a world he had thought was forever beyond reach. The day following the women's departure, John felt a strange emptiness on the ranch. The quiet he was used to seemed heavier somehow, as if the land itself remembered their presence and now missed it. He went about his chores with diligence, feeding the cattle, mending fences, and checking water troughs, yet every so often his thoughts drifted back to the four women. Their laughter, their stories, and the gentle way they had carried themselves played repeatedly in his mind. He realized how much he had missed human connection and the simple joy of shared company. By mid-morning, John decided to take a break and sit on a small rise near the pasture. The sun was high in the sky, warming the earth beneath his boots. He watched the cattle grazing lazily, their movements calm and predictable. Yet, despite the routine around him, he felt restless. The visit had stirred something in him, a longing he had not acknowledged in years. He thought about the women, how their presence had illuminated parts of his life that had grown dim over time: joy, curiosity, and the comfort of being understood. As he sat there, lost in reflection, a sudden movement at the edge of the pasture caught his eye. 4 figures were approaching, moving with purpose yet careful not to startle the cattle. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be them again? As they drew nearer, he noticed their familiar, confident expressions and felt a mix of surprise and relief. Maria, Alina, Rosa, and Leela had returned. Their unexpected return filled the ranch with a renewed sense of energy, like a sudden burst of sunlight after a long, cloudy day. John greeted them warmly, though with a hint of nervousness. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon," he said, trying to sound casual though his voice betrayed his excitement. Maria smiled gently. "We realized that our journey could wait a little," she replied. "We wanted to spend more time here to learn, to share, and to help if we can." John nodded, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. The 4 women dismounted their horses and followed him into the cabin, shedding layers of wet clothing. Their presence brought life back into the small home, filling it with light, warmth, and the subtle hum of conversation. They settled by the fire, and over breakfast, conversation flowed easily. Alina shared tales from her childhood, filled with playful adventures and lessons learned from elders. Rosa asked thoughtful questions about the ranch, eager to understand the land and the challenges John faced daily. Leela, with her youthful energy, teased and joked, prompting laughter that bounced off the wooden walls. Maria, the eldest, guided the discussion with quiet wisdom, offering insights drawn from years of experience and observation. John listened, captivated, and found himself contributing stories he had long kept buried. As the hours passed, it became clear that this stay would be longer than a brief visit. The women's presence was no longer a fleeting interruption. It had become a shared experience, a blending of lives and perspectives. They worked together, tending to minor repairs on the ranch, assisting with feeding the cattle, and even helping to organize supplies. The simple acts of cooperation created a rhythm and a sense of purpose that John had not realized he had been missing. Each task, though ordinary, became a way to bond, to understand one another, and to appreciate the beauty of collaboration. By midday, the women suggested a walk to explore the surrounding land. John hesitated only briefly before agreeing, eager to show them the beauty of the ranch and the hills beyond. As they moved across the land, the conversation deepened. Maria spoke about traditions and stories passed down through generations, revealing lessons about resilience, respect, and the balance between independence and community. Alina shared anecdotes that brought laughter and a sense of shared humanity. Rosa offered quiet observations, noting the small wonders of the environment that John often took for granted. Leela, energetic and playful, kept spirits high, making the walk both enjoyable and enlightening. During the walk, John began to feel a profound sense of connection. It was not romantic or fleeting. It was something deeper, rooted in mutual respect and genuine interest. The women had a way of listening that made him feel valued, seen, and understood. They asked questions, shared experiences, and offered insights without judgment. For the first time in decades, John felt truly present, fully alive in the company of others. The landscape around them seemed to mirror this awakening, the hills more vibrant, the sky brighter, and even the wind carrying a sense of possibility. As the day progressed, they returned to the cabin for lunch. The meal was simple, yet the act of sharing it together created a profound sense of warmth and community. Stories flowed easily, punctuated by laughter, quiet reflections, and moments of silence that were comfortable rather than awkward. John found himself revealing details of his life he had never shared with anyone, the dreams he had abandoned, the moments of failure and regret, and the small joys that had sustained him over the years. The women listened with patience and empathy, validating his experiences and encouraging him to see them with fresh perspective. The afternoon brought an opportunity for another shared activity. Maria suggested they work on a small garden plot near the cabin, planting hardy herbs and vegetables that could thrive in the desert climate. John agreed, intrigued by the idea of creating something new alongside these women who had brought so much life into his home. The work was physical and demanding, yet rewarding. As they dug, planted, and watered, conversation continued. They spoke of nature, resilience, and the lessons that could be learned from tending to the land. John realized that this simple activity was teaching him not only about plants, but about patience, collaboration, and the joy of shared effort. By evening, the bond between John and the women had grown stronger. They gathered around the fire, the cabin filled with warmth, light, and the gentle crackle of burning wood. Alina told stories of her travels, Rosa reflected on the lessons learned from elders, Leela shared dreams and ambitions, and Maria guided the conversation with wisdom and insight. John contributed as well, recounting tales of life on the ranch, the lessons learned from the land, and the quiet triumphs of years spent in solitude. Each voice, each story, contributed to a tapestry of connection and understanding that enveloped them all. As night settled in, the wind outside whispered through the hills, carrying the scent of earth and sage. The storm from the previous day had fully passed, leaving the world refreshed and renewed. Inside the cabin, however, another kind of renewal was taking place. John felt a profound shift within himself. He had spent so many years believing he would be alone forever, yet these four women had awakened something long dormant, a capacity for trust, companionship, and genuine connection. Their presence had illuminated the possibilities of life beyond solitude. Before retiring for the night, they stepped outside to admire the stars. The desert sky stretched endlessly, filled with countless points of light that seemed almost within reach. Maria spoke softly about the constellations, sharing stories of the past and the lessons embedded in the night sky. Alina, Rosa, and Leela listened, their faces illuminated by starlight and the flickering fire. John stood among them, feeling a sense of peace and belonging that he had not known in decades. The vastness of the universe, once a symbol of his isolation, now felt like a canvas for connection, hope, and new beginnings. As they returned to the cabin, John realized that the night had changed him in ways he could not yet fully articulate. The women's presence, their stories, and their quiet strength had rekindled a spark of life and possibility within him. He understood that companionship was not merely about proximity or obligation. It was about understanding, respect, and shared experience. He had thought he would be alone forever, but this night had shown him that life could still surprise him, offering lessons, connections, and moments of joy when least expected. Finally, as they settled by the fire, conversation gave way to reflective silence. John watched the women, noticing the small gestures that revealed their character. Alina's gentle laugh, Rosa's thoughtful gaze, Leela's playful smile, and Maria's steady presence. He felt gratitude for their visit, understanding that they had not only sought shelter from the storm, but had also provided him with a gift far greater than he could have imagined. The gift of human connection, trust, and the realization that life could still hold wonder. The night drew on, and one by one they spoke of the day's experiences, the lessons learned, and the moments that had touched them most. John listened, feeling a mixture of humility and joy. He had believed that his life was fixed, confined to routine and solitude, but the events of this day had proven otherwise. The ranch, the land, and the cabin had become a stage for something remarkable, an awakening of heart, mind, and spirit. As he finally lay down to rest, John felt a profound sense of anticipation. He did not know what the next day would bring, or whether the women would stay longer, but he understood that life had opened a door he had long thought closed. The evening's experiences had taught him that connections could form in unexpected ways, that strangers could leave lasting impressions, and that hope could flourish even in the most isolated corners of the world. With these thoughts, he drifted into sleep, the fire's warmth still lingering, and the memory of laughter, stories, and starlit skies filling his dreams. The morning after the women had spent the night at the ranch, John woke with a quiet sense of reflection. The cabin was calm, the fire reduced to glowing embers, and the air carried a faint scent of herbs and earth that the women had brought with them. The events of the past 2 days were still vivid in his mind. Their laughter, their stories, and their presence seemed to linger in every corner of the cabin, and he realized that he had been touched in ways he had not expected. For years, he had believed that solitude was his fate, but now he saw that life had a way of presenting opportunities, often when they were least expected. He moved through his morning chores with a new energy. The cattle seemed more spirited, the fences easier to repair, and even the tasks that usually felt monotonous carried a sense of purpose. John thought about the women and the lessons he had learned from them. It was not just their company that mattered, but the way they had opened his eyes to the richness of human connection. They had reminded him that trust, kindness, and empathy could still be found in the world, and that these qualities could bring life and joy even to the most isolated places. Later that morning, John decided to take a walk across the ranch. The land stretched endlessly under the bright sun, and the hills shimmered with the subtle greens and browns of the desert flora. He walked slowly, feeling the warmth of the sun and the cool breeze against his face. As he moved through the familiar landscape, he reflected on how much he had changed in just a short time. The women's visit had been brief, yet it had left a profound mark on him. Their presence had encouraged him to think about life in new ways, to reconsider old assumptions, and to embrace the possibility of growth and change. John recalled how Maria had spoken about the wisdom of elders and the importance of community. She had emphasized that life was not meant to be faced alone, and that support and connection could strengthen even the strongest individuals. Alina had shared stories that celebrated courage, curiosity, and the joy of learning from others. Rosa had reminded him to pay attention to the small details, to notice the subtle beauty in everyday life. And Leela, with her youthful energy, had shown him the importance of laughter, play, and keeping one's spirit light. Each of their lessons lingered in his mind, forming a tapestry of insight that he had not realized he was missing. By midday, John felt inspired to take further steps toward opening his life. He began to reach out to neighbors he had not spoken to in years, sending simple greetings and inquiries about their well-being. At first, the interactions were tentative and awkward, but gradually they became easier. The women had shown him that kindness could be extended without expectation, and that even small gestures could have meaningful impact. John began to experience a subtle shift in his worldview. The ranch, once a place of isolation, now felt like a hub of potential connection, a place where interactions could be rich and meaningful. In the following days, John also devoted more attention to the ranch itself. He repaired fences more thoroughly, organized supplies more efficiently, and tended to the cattle with renewed care. These tasks, though practical, became symbolic of his internal transformation. By investing effort and attention into his surroundings, he was also investing in himself. He realized that life could be more vibrant and fulfilling when approached with intention, mindfulness, and an openness to change. The women had shown him that growth was possible at any stage of life, and that taking small steps could lead to meaningful transformations. As the week progressed, John continued to reflect on the experience. He realized that the visit had not only brought him companionship, but also a sense of perspective. He began to appreciate the richness of his own life, the quiet mornings, the labor of the ranch, the beauty of the land, while also understanding that these things were more meaningful when shared with others. He recognized that solitude, though comfortable, could become limiting if it prevented him from engaging with the world. The women's presence had reminded him of the value of balance, the harmony between independence and connection, between personal reflection and shared experiences. One afternoon, John decided to explore a nearby canyon, a place he had seldom visited despite its proximity. The path was rugged, winding through rocky terrain and patches of desert flora. As he walked, he noticed details he had previously overlooked: the patterns of lichen on stones, the sound of water trickling from a hidden spring, the sudden flight of a hawk overhead. He thought about how the women had taught him to notice these small wonders, to appreciate the subtle beauty of the world around him. Their lessons had not only been about human connection, but also about seeing life with renewed clarity and appreciation. During his walk, John encountered a small group of neighbors who had come to check on the land after the storm. He greeted them warmly, and conversation flowed easily. For the first time in years, he felt comfortable interacting with others, sharing stories and exchanging advice. The women's visit had given him the confidence to engage with the world again, to step out of his self-imposed isolation and participate in community life. He realized that connection did not require grand gestures. Even simple interactions could be meaningful and transformative. By evening, John returned to the cabin, feeling a sense of satisfaction and purpose. He prepared a simple dinner, savoring the routine while also reflecting on the changes in his life. The ranch no longer felt like a place of solitude alone. It was a canvas for growth, learning, and human connection. He realized that the brief visit of the four women had sparked a transformation that went far beyond companionship. They had inspired him to re-engage with life, to embrace change, and to recognize the potential for joy and fulfillment in both ordinary and extraordinary moments. That night, as John sat by the fire, he thought about the lessons he had learned. The women had shown him that trust and empathy were not signs of weakness, but of strength. They had reminded him that life was enriched by sharing experiences and by valuing the perspectives of others. He understood that personal growth was an ongoing process, and that the willingness to remain open to new experiences was essential for living fully. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope that extended beyond the immediate comforts of the ranch. Over the following weeks, John continued to apply the lessons he had learned. He organized community gatherings at the ranch, inviting neighbors and friends to share meals, stories, and laughter. He engaged in conversations with young people, offering guidance and encouragement while also learning from their perspectives. The ranch became a place of mutual support, a hub for connection and understanding. The quiet, isolated life he had once known was now balanced with shared experiences that brought vitality and joy. John also took time for personal reflection. He kept a journal, writing about his experiences, his thoughts, and the insights gained from the women's visit. This practice allowed him to process emotions, recognize patterns in his behavior, and set intentions for continued growth. He found that documenting his journey reinforced the lessons he had learned and provided a tangible reminder of the transformation taking place within him. As the months passed, John's life was undeniably different. The ranch remained his home and sanctuary, but it was no longer a symbol of isolation. It had become a place of learning, connection, and growth. He maintained friendships with neighbors and travelers alike, and he approached each day with curiosity, openness, and gratitude. The women's visit had ignited a change that extended far beyond a single night. It had reshaped the way he viewed life, relationships, and the possibilities for personal fulfillment. One crisp morning, John stood atop a small rise overlooking the ranch, watching the sun rise over the hills. The sky was painted in hues of gold, pink, and purple, and the land below shimmered with dew. He thought back to the four women, their laughter, wisdom, and presence, and realized how profoundly they had influenced him. Their visit had been brief, yet its impact was lasting, transforming both his perspective and his approach to life. John understood that even brief encounters could carry immense power, shaping the course of a life in ways that might not be immediately visible. As he descended the rise and returned to the cabin, John felt a sense of completeness. The solitude he had once relied on was no longer a necessity. He had learned that life's richness came from both independence and connection. The women's visit had taught him that growth, joy, and understanding were always within reach, provided one remained open to the lessons the world offered. With these reflections in mind, he prepared for the day ahead, carrying with him a newfound sense of purpose, resilience, and hope. The weeks turned into months, and John's life on the ranch was no longer what it had once been. The quiet, predictable days that had defined his existence for decades had transformed into days filled with purpose, connection, and subtle joy. Though he continued his daily routines, feeding the cattle, checking fences, and tending to the land, there was now a new rhythm to his life. He carried within him the lessons and warmth brought by the four women who had briefly stepped into his world, leaving a lasting imprint on his heart and mind. John began the day as he always had, rising before dawn to check on the cattle. Yet now he moved with a sense of anticipation rather than obligation. He looked forward to seeing neighbors who sometimes stopped by to share news or seek advice. He welcomed travelers and hikers who wandered near the ranch, offering guidance and a warm smile. The ranch, once a place of isolation, had become a hub of gentle community activity, a space where both work and social connection coexisted harmoniously. John found himself smiling more often, his heart lighter than it had been in years. The women's visit, brief as it had been, had ignited a change in him that was far more profound than he had initially realized. Maria's quiet wisdom, Alina's stories of courage and curiosity, Rose's attention to life's small details, and Leela's youthful energy had collectively reshaped his outlook. John had learned that companionship and understanding were not limited to romantic connection. They existed in laughter, shared work, thoughtful conversation, and simple gestures of care. Every time he remembered their visit, he felt a surge of gratitude, a recognition of how transformative a brief encounter could be. One afternoon, John decided to invite some of his neighbors and friends to the ranch for a small gathering. The idea had seemed foreign to him in the past, when social interaction felt like a burden or a risk. But now he was eager to create space for connection, laughter, and shared stories. He prepared a simple meal, organizing seating near the cabin and setting out plates, bowls, and cups with care. As guests began to arrive, John felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The ranch, once a symbol of solitude, now reflected the vibrant exchange of life and community. The gathering was simple yet joyful. Neighbors shared news, children played near the fence, and stories were exchanged over cups of tea and hearty bread. John listened attentively, occasionally contributing his own tales of ranch life, animals, and the lessons learned from years of solitude. Laughter filled the air, and for the first time in decades, John felt truly connected to the world beyond his cabin walls. The experience reinforced a truth he had come to understand. Life's richness was not found solely in independence, but in the balance between solitude and shared moments with others. As days passed, John continued to integrate these lessons into his life. He started a small garden, inspired by the work he had done with the women during their visit. He planted herbs, vegetables, and flowers, tending them with care and attention. The garden became a symbol of growth, both literally and figuratively. Just as the plants flourished under his care, John felt his own life blossoming with renewed energy, hope, and purpose. He realized that nurturing life, whether plants, animals, or relationships, required patience, commitment, and openness, all qualities he had rediscovered through the women's influence. Evenings became a special time for reflection and gratitude. John would sit by the fire, sipping warm tea and reviewing the day's events. He often thought back to the night the four women had stayed at his ranch, remembering their stories, laughter, and the quiet wisdom they had shared. Those memories were no longer fleeting. They had become part of his identity, shaping his approach to life and his interactions with others. John understood that while the women's visit had been brief, the lessons they imparted were enduring, capable of guiding him through both ordinary days and moments of challenge. One particular evening, as John watched the stars emerge in the vast desert sky, he felt a profound sense of peace. The land stretched endlessly around him, bathed in silver moonlight. The silence, once heavy and isolating, now felt comforting and rich with possibility. He thought about the journey he had undergone, from a life of resigned solitude to one of purposeful engagement with the world. The transformation had been subtle at first, then gradually more apparent, as he embraced connection, community, and personal growth. The ranch had become a place of balance, reflecting both his independence and the relationships he now nurtured. John also began mentoring a few young ranchers in the area, sharing the skills and wisdom he had accumulated over decades. He taught them about the land, animal care, and practical problem solving, but he also imparted lessons about patience, resilience, and the importance of cultivating human connections. These interactions brought him immense satisfaction. He realized that the women's influence extended beyond their immediate visit. They had sparked a ripple effect that reached the community around him, encouraging generosity, kindness, and shared learning. In addition to mentoring, John found joy in reconnecting with old friends he had lost touch with. Letters and phone calls became a regular part of his life, and he discovered that many people he had once known were eager to rekindle relationships. The bonds he formed were not rushed or forced. They were built on a foundation of mutual respect and a renewed appreciation for shared experiences. The women's visit had taught him the value of opening one's heart, and he now approached each interaction with curiosity, patience, and care. Throughout these months, John noticed subtle changes within himself. He laughed more freely, listened more attentively, and approached challenges with a newfound optimism. Even the routine tasks of ranch life, feeding the cattle, mending fences, and tending to the land, felt imbued with meaning and satisfaction. He recognized that life's beauty lay not only in extraordinary moments, but also in the ordinary routines that were enriched by presence, attention, and intention. The women had shown him that connection, joy, and growth could emerge even in the smallest of daily actions. One morning, while inspecting the fields, John reflected on the unpredictable nature of life. He had once believed that his path was fixed, that solitude was his inevitable fate. Yet, a single encounter with four strangers had reshaped his perspective entirely. He realized that life's possibilities were vast, often hidden, and sometimes revealed in the most unexpected ways. The ranch, the land, and the sky were constants, but human connection, fleeting, delicate, and transformative, was a force capable of reshaping one's heart and mind. John also began to notice changes in the broader community. Neighbors and travelers alike were drawn to the ranch, inspired by the sense of openness, hospitality, and wisdom that John now embodied. The ranch had become more than a home. It was a gathering place, a space where stories were shared, knowledge exchanged, and bonds formed. John felt immense satisfaction knowing that he had cultivated a place where people could come together, find support, and experience connection in its many forms. As evening fell, John sat by the fire, reflecting once more on the journey that had brought him to this point. The brief visit of the four women had sparked a transformation that went far beyond companionship. It had rekindled hope, curiosity, and a sense of purpose. He understood that life's richness was not measured solely by independence or solitude, but by the depth of connection, the willingness to embrace new experiences, and the openness to growth. The ranch, once a symbol of isolation, now reflected the fullness of life, relationship, and learning. In the weeks and months that followed, John continued to nurture both the land and the connections he had formed. He celebrated small victories, the growth of his garden, the progress of his cattle, the laughter of children on the ranch, and he cherished the ongoing lessons from neighbors, friends, and visitors. The experience of being touched by the presence of others had reshaped his identity, revealing the possibility of joy, fulfillment, and shared growth even in the later chapters of life. Finally, one evening, John stood on a hill overlooking the ranch, the setting sun casting golden light over the land. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey he had undergone, the solitude that had taught him resilience, the storm that had brought unexpected visitors, and the women whose brief stay had transformed his heart. He understood that life was unpredictable, but that within its uncertainties lay the potential for profound change, growth, and connection. With this understanding, he felt ready to embrace whatever the future held, knowing that his heart, once closed, was now open to life's possibilities. John returned to the cabin, his steps light and his spirit calm. He tended to the fire, prepared a simple dinner, and sat with a sense of contentment that he had never known. The ranch was no longer just a place of survival. It was a home, a hub of connection, and a canvas for a life fully lived. He knew that the experiences of the past months, the laughter, stories, lessons, and bonds, would continue to guide him, providing both inspiration and grounding for the years ahead. As he finally closed his eyes that night, John felt a quiet certainty that life, no matter how long one has been alone, could always offer surprises, lessons, and moments of profound connection. The journey that had begun with a storm and 4 unexpected visitors had blossomed into a life richer than he could have imagined, a life filled with hope, understanding, and the enduring beauty of shared human experience.